I was 18. It was the fall of 1984. I made it to my senior year of high school, and to come home to my family and have my trash bag sitting at the door because they weren't going to receive a check any longer. It happens every day to kids in foster care, and it happened to me. When I was a little boy, for 12 years of my life, my father would punch me in my bladder anytime I would pee. They gave me 1 month pay, one-way plane ticket to Dulles Airport. My son, Grayson, he was 5 years old when we packed our very first case, says to me, "Daddy, we have to put a blankie in the backpack." I said, "A blanket?" I was like, "Grayson, you know the kids are not cold." He said, "I know, Daddy, but every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them."
You're listening to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. I'm your host, Lori Seitz. This show exists because fine is a lie leaders tell themselves, and it costs them their people, their culture, and their impact. Every episode, a leader gets honest about what it really takes to lead with empathy, vulnerability, gratitude, and courage. I trust something in this conversation will stay with you. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today, Dr. Rob Scheer. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Lori, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
We had such a fantastic conversation, like the pre-show conversation. And when Rob called in, he said, do you do all your podcast interviews from the car? Because I was in the car. And I'm like, no, this is just the pre-show.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. I know, because I was like, and Laura, you know as well as I do, there are so many people out there doing so many crazy things. And I just thought, my team was like, hey, anytime I can talk about foster care, I'm going to do that. But when you zoomed in with and I was like, oh, this is a first.
It's like the Jerry Seinfeld thing, getting coffee with comedians in cars.
Yes,
That
exactly.
is not what we were doing. Today we are both in our offices. So
yes.
Rob, share a little bit. We're going to get more into your story. And typically I ask my guests this question as a way for people to understand what their background is. But in your case, I don't know how you're going to answer this. The question typically is, what are the values and beliefs that you were raised with that contributed to you becoming who you are? And so I'm going to throw it out there and see what you say.
Oh my God. First of all, Laura, you know me. So what a question. Oh. So many young people have graduated just recently. So many people are going to the next chapter within their lives during this season. And I look back and I have to say this with all feeling within my heart is those acts of kindness in my path were majority teachers. So there were people. I'm sorry to say they weren't parents that molded me. I didn't have a father figure or a mother figure, but I had in those years of being a young person who entered foster care, and even prior to that, living through the hell I lived through, and then being homeless, it was always a teacher. So I'd have to say that. They molded me, but there was something inside of me. I call it my grit. And my grit was I wanted to be a doer. See, we all think that the world spins on an axle, but it doesn't. It spins for the doers who push it every day. And that's what I wanted to be.
I love that analogy of the doers are the ones spinning the axis.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And I also appreciate the way you answered that, because most people do think about their parents, but even if you had parents, there are other people in your life influencing you strongly that you probably don't even recognize.
No, and they were, and I have to tell you, I don't think I've ever shared this story. When my memoir had come out, my agent was adamant that I had to go back to my hometown. And do this book signing. I remember I asked my biological sister, I asked of course my husband and our kids were there. And so we pull up and at this Barnes and Noble, and literally it's like so many people. And I'm like, what are all these people here for? And they were like, they're here for you to sign their book. And I was like, what in the world? So I go in, I sit down at this table, Lori, and I'm signing away, and my kids are there, and my husband, and people are like wanting pictures. And I hear this woman. She said, "Robert, I always knew you would amount to something." Then I looked up, Lori, and it was my teacher.
Oh my gosh, I'm like getting tears.
She was in her 70s. She didn't have social media, by the way. She didn't know. And one of my friends, my dear friend Michelle, her and I have been friends forever. She's the one who wrote Mrs. Boley a letter and said, I don't know if you know what's going on with Robert, but he's written this book. He wrote about you in the book. I wrote about this teacher.
Oh my
And
gosh.
not that I never saw her again since I had graduated. So to hear this, I look up and she's crying.
I'm crying now.
I started crying and I got up, I hugged her, and she says to me, she said, again, I knew you would amount to something. And she says, and by the way, we all knew you were homeless. She's like, we just didn't know what to do.
Oh man. That is incredible. Where's your hometown?
My hometown, Manassas, Virginia.
Oh, okay. My area of the world, sort of. Northern Virginia. Okay. So speaking of that, you have such an interesting backstory, and that you amounted to something from those circumstances is just, I don't know. That word testament is so overused now in AI, but a testament to your spirit, the human spirit as a whole.
Yeah, Lori, I have to say, and I don't want people to think this, and you can believe whatever you want. And I always remind people, kids in foster care, they don't care what you believe. They don't care actually who you vote for either. They don't care whether you're blue. They just care that you care. Okay, care that you care. But that for me has been something that I have told people. I'm not going to allow anything to define my future but me.
So you mentioned being homeless. That happened your senior year in high school, right? What happened?
Yeah, I had done what so many kids in our foster care system will do. They will age out. When we enter the system, we're cute, we want to be, but when we become 17 and 18, we get scary. And what do they do to us? They throw us out, just like they did to me. I was 18. It was the fall of 1984. And I'd made it to my senior year of high school, which is something that's very unusual for kids in foster care. And by the way, I'm the youngest of 10 kids. My brothers and sisters, they hadn't made it. They fell to the wayside: teenage pregnancy, drug addiction, incarceration.
Oh my gosh.
My mother did not go further than 8th grade. So for me to be a senior in high school and to come home to my family and have my trash bag sitting at the door because they weren't going to receive a check any longer, it happens every day to kids in foster care, and it happened to me. But I made a choice. Okay. And I want to remind people all the time, and I hear this quite often. My mother, for example, was married 6 times. She had 10 kids. Life was hell. But guess what? People say, oh, your mother was a product of her environment. Bullshit. My mother was a product of her choices. Her choices. So let's all understand that. Stop with the crap of the product. No, and so I had a choice to make. And by the way, that choice is not always easy, and sometimes the easy choice is the hardest choice. But again, I just didn't want people to think that I was that person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So where were you living? You're homeless. Were you living in a car? Did a friend take you in?
Car. I mean, so first of all, I did a lot of couch surfing. So thanks to all my friends who have listened to me throughout the journey. I remember I went back to my 25th high school reunion. And of course, I was the crap because I was the one person who I was on TV and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, these are the same kids that pushed me in lockers, spit on me, laughed at me because I was homeless. But then I had a job. Listen to this. I had a job at a taco place making $3.35 an hour. That was the minimum wage back in those days.
Yeah.
And the owner found out that I was the token homeless kid in town. And so he would make the managers leave the outside bathroom door unlocked at night, and I would go in there and sleep. When it would get really, really cold, I would go to the public library, and I would go into the very back. I'd wait till about 8:15. Library closed about 8:30, 8:45. I'd go to the very, very back, and they'd turn the lights off and leave. And back in those days, we didn't have alarms. We didn't have, cameras and all that crap. And I would get a good night's sleep there on the beanbag chairs.
But you were locked in.
Yeah.
And so how did you get out in the morning for school?
The next morning, the librarian would come in, open up the doors. She'd go back to her office, and I'd walk out.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that several times. I'd get up in the I when I slept outside when it was warmer, I'd go to the school before the kids got there so I could go in, and then they always served breakfast and lunch, and so I would wait for the kids to leave. We had the senior lounge back in those days. And I would go into the
Where people would smoke.
Oh my God. And by the way, I wasn't one of those kids. That's the thing that blew my mind, Lori, is that I wasn't one of those kids. I wasn't one of those kids that I didn't cause problems. I went to church every Sunday. I was that good Mormon boy that my foster parents wanted me to be. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's where you started.
Yeah.
And how did you find the trajectory that you did?
Oh my gosh. So I joined the United States Navy. And by the way, I did not join the Navy to take care of you or any of your listeners or viewers. I joined the Navy because I was scared and I wanted a place to go, and I made it. And by the way, I became a very successful businessman. I realized what my community had taught me is that I had to worry about me, and me. And so for me, it was about my big house, my expensive cars, my money, until 17 years ago when our kids started to arrive. And as our children arrived, my husband and I knew that something was happening because each one of them arrived carrying a trash bag just like me. And I was like, no way can we have this happen. And so, yeah, that was the start of the journey.
What career did you go into?
I was a banker. I was a banker for 28 years. My partners and I, we had mortgage companies all over this country. And I loved the industry. The industry saved my life. The industry was everything. And I tell people all the time, and I said this to our kids, there are two things that you can do in the world, and you can always guarantee you'll have a job. Number one, you can be a mortician. We're all going to die.
Sure.
We cannot talk about it. We can sit here and say it's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you all, we are not going to live forever. We're going to die. So be a mortician. You'll never be out of a job. Also, get in the mortgage industry because no matter what, and by the way, I bought my first house. It was almost 14%. But no matter what, we are always going to buy, sell, and refinance property. So for me, that's what I did.
Okay. That's so smart. Like, again, you didn't have the parental.
You want to know how I fell into the mortgage industry?
Yeah.
Okay, by the way, Lori, I don't even know the difference between there, and there. I barely graduated high school. I joined the United States Navy because I truly wanted to make something of myself. I graduated from boot camp. I was voted the honor man at boot camp, which was, I couldn't believe it. Here, this dirty kid who came into the Navy, got his head buzzed, cleaned up, didn't have to tell anybody that I was homeless, by the way. That's when I became Rob. I used to be Robert. Up until that day I got on that bus to go to BWI to fly to Chicago, that's the day I became Rob. And so for me, I was in the Navy, I was excelling, and then I woke up in the hospital. And I remember the nurse came in and said, "Seaman recruit, do you know why you're here?" I said, "No, ma'am." And she said, "Your bladder ruptured." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Your bladder ruptured." See, when I was a little boy, for 12 years of my life, my father would punch me in my bladder anytime I would pee. He would do it to my siblings. And so what happened of all those years, I would hold my urine because I was scared. Even though he wasn't going to hit me again, it's trauma. And so my bladder ruptured. So the Navy, they fixed me. They put me in a hotel for 2 weeks right outside of Chicago. I came back to the base and I walked into Petty Officer Green's office, and there he was sitting, and he was teary-eyed because he knew my story. And there laying on the table was a yellow envelope. And he says, "I don't know how to do this." I said, "What?" And he said, "They're discharging you." I said, "What?" He said, "They're discharging you." He said, "We're at a time that we don't need recruits." And he said, "And you missed it by 30 days by receiving a check for the rest of your life."
Oh my gosh.
So Lori, they gave me 1 month pay, one-way plane ticket to Dulles Airport. Okay. I flew there. I then hitchhiked down Route 7 to a little town called Gore, Virginia. I found a hotel that rented by the week. I got my hotel room. I then hitchhiked into Winchester. I got a job at the Dart. The Dart is like Target these days. And I was about maybe enough money left for one more week or I was going to be homeless again. and I walked into the Salvation Army and I bought a suit. I then walked into the public library, my safe place, and I typed a resume that you would have hired me, but it was all lies, all lies.
Okay.
I put that suit on and I proceeded walking up and down the streets of Winchester, Virginia, dropping my resume off. And a gentleman said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for a job, sir." He said, "Come into my office." He sat down, he interviewed me. He was actually a manager of a mortgage company. He hired me on the spot. Within a year and a half, Lori, I got my own apartment. I bought this beat up junker of a car. But the guilt of being a liar was so heavy that I was doing destructive things. And I walked into his office and I handed him my letter of resignation. I said, "I have to resign." He said, "What?" He said, "When I tell you to get to work at 8, you're here at 7. He's like, "I tell you to leave at 6, you're here at 8 o'clock at night." He's like, "Robbie," he's like, "you've learned this industry within almost 2 years like I've never seen. Why are you leaving me?" And I said, "Because remember that resume I gave you?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "It was all lies." He's like, "What?" I was like, "It was all lies." And I told him my story. He got up out of the desk. He walked over to a file cabinet and he pulled out a folder. He walked over to his desk. He opened up the folder and there was that resume. He pulled up the resume and he ripped it up. And he looked at me. He said, "Rob, you're the most honest person I've ever met." He's like, "I want you to do me a big favor. I want you to get back to work." And that's what I did. And for that, I climbed that corporate ladder.
Yes. Well, you had so much reason or purpose behind not just the lies, but your desire to prove to that you could be something.
And that's what it was. It was, I wanted people to see that I was more than a kid in foster care, that I was more than a trash bag, that I was somebody who wanted to actually provide for myself. But now I'm so lucky because I get to provide for not one, but 5 amazing young people who have been able to let me say, they're my kids. And my husband and I have been together 21 years. I'm married to a saint. He has been a stay-at-home dad raising our children for the last 15 years. His sacrifice every single day is, I always say, if I can be a quarter of the man my husband is, I've really made it. And by the way, my husband is very educated. He has his master's. But he felt that the most important job was to raise our kids and to be home and to be on field trips and do all of those things. And by the way, our youngest son is now 17. Our oldest is 25. And I said to my husband recently, I said, "Do you think you're going to go back to work?" He said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "I have spent 15 years Ubering, soccer dad, all of the things." He said, "This is my time, my time." And I looked at him and I said, "And you earned it." So
That's awesome. So what are you doing now? Because you didn't stay in business. I mean, you're in business. I don't want to, but it's a different shift.
yeah, so it's crazy. So in 2013, I was sitting in my office outside of DC, and life was great. My kids were going to private schools, wearing designer clothes. But as I looked at them, I realized that I had been raising 4 very entitled children, that I was so worried to give them all the things that I didn't get when I was a young kid, that I forgot 2 of the most important things. And I said this to my husband in my office when he come in to talk to me about a toy drive we were going to do or something. And one, we as parents need to understand that we must teach our children our legacy. And what we all must understand is your legacy is about what you give and not what you take. But what I realized is that we forgot to teach our kids empathy. And empathy is the most important thing. And it's not in our DNA. It's taught. And so that's where we decided to take that trash bag away from a kid in foster care and give them a backpack of hope filled with all the essentials that I know we needed on that first night. Brand new pair of pajamas, lotion, shampoo, conditioner, bar of soap, toothbrush, book, activity, stuffy, and then my son, Grayson. Oh, he was 5 years old when we packed our very first case. He arrived when he was 2 with his little brother who was 6 months. So 5 years old, this little man says to me, "Daddy, we have to put a blankie in the backpack." I said, "A blankie?" I was like, "Grayson, you know the kids are not cold." He said, "I know, Daddy, but every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them."
Wow.
From the mouths of babes. I was like, that's what we all want. We want to be loved. We want to know we matter. So with that, Lori, we packed a case and another and another. And with a 96% volunteer ran organization, we have packed and delivered over 320,000 cases. We've delivered them to all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico.
You made a comment that we're not born with empathy.
No, it's not in our DNA.
It isn't. It's not.
No,
But
empathy
your
is not in our DNA.
5-year-old.
No, empathy is not in our DNA. Empathy is taught. Whether it's taught through the schools, whether it's taught through your parents, look it up. It's not in our DNA.
I'm shocked.
Empathy is a taught behavior. It's a taught behavior. And the sad part is, and for me as a public speaker who is, last year over 200 nights in hotels, I will tell you, I am shocked as I travel the country to teach people empathy, the number of people who don't know and don't have empathy.
I can understand that.
Empathy, and then don't even have the definition of empathy. And no, it's not in our DNA. That in our as humans, the act of caring, we hope. But let's talk about our serial killers. I mean, doctors have talked about serial killers from the time they were little, where they had no empathy for someone, that they had no care. So again, it's not in our DNA. It's a taught behavior.
You and I were talking at our first call, and I asked you the question of since you were not raised with this, and the way you and your husband have raised your children, I think I asked you something along the lines of, how did you know what to do? How did you know how to be?
And remember, I told you that I said I didn't. I was actually angry with my husband because I saw the connection he had with our first son, Mackay. And it was like, but I had him. I had my father-in-law. He was such an incredible human. So that's who I had, those people. And by the way, our kids now are 17, 19, 21. And in 2019, we adopted our fifth son, and he was 18 years old when we met him. I called an adult adoption, very rare. But I still make mistakes as a dad. I still,
we're human.
And I say to our kids all the time, forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is about you. And so for you to forgive me is for the mistakes I've made. It's, for you to take your power back, because I tell my kids, Dad has the power. I want you to build your superpower.
That question in that story reminded me that I believe we're all born, like, love is the thing. Like, we're born from love as a general emotion. I mean, like, that's the
I would love that. I would want that, and I would hope people, but
that's what's in our heart when we are born as innocent little beings. And so empathy doesn't fit, like, I would think those two go together. Love and empathy, like, that's just how
now you're probably a lot more educated than I am, but I will tell you, for the last 13 and a half years, empathy not in our DNA. I have to tell you, I got to give all credit where credit's due. That was taught to me as well, that it's not in our DNA when I was doing a research of changing my career as a public speaker, about educating our public. So, yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I know you're going to research this. I know you would.
I absolutely am, because I'm fascinated by that tidbit of information, because I think we are all born from a higher power of love.
Yeah.
And yet empathy isn't part of that. So interesting. Okay. So you're packing these backpacks for kids.
Yes.
And how did it grow from what you were just doing it kind of randomly as a donation kind of thing?
No, I was doing it randomly. And what happened was somebody heard about it. My assistant was the one who convinced us to start the nonprofit. And it was just going along fine. A couple of years in my conference room, my kids were learning about giving back. And then my memoir got published by Derek Jeter. And that's when everything just...
Wait, Derek Jeter?
Yeah.
The baseball player?
The baseball player.
Published your memoir.
Yes. So
Okay, what?
Derek has Derek, first of all, is an incredible human. He had a publishing company called Jeter Publishing, and so him and Simon and Schuster ended up getting the rights to my book and published my book. And so when Derek published my book, he sent me on a book tour, and I realized at that point I no longer wanted a job. I wanted a purpose. And so I remember I came back and told my husband, and my husband was like, "Whoa, you're the breadwinner of this family."
You can't quit your job.
He's like, "What are
We
you talking
we
about?
have
You're going to
kids
sell
to
our
feed.
companies?" He's like, "You're going to sell your shares to our business partner? What are you?" And I was like, "Yep, I'm going to do it." I was like, "You believed in me all this time. You're going to believe in me again." And I did. And and by the way, Lori, I'm being booked all the way for. I've got books in 2027, but it's been amazing. And so that's how it all started. And then I was on the Ellen show with my husband, and then Ellen helped us get into more states, and all the other states. So yeah, it's just been, it's like I said, I don't have a job, Lori. I have a purpose.
You have all these volunteers doing work for you in different states.
All over the country, all over the world now. We in 2021 we started a facility. We have a center in the UK where they serve 84,000 children there. So, and in our national center, there are some time slots. We have a 3-month waiting list.
For volunteers?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
But you have a bigger need.
No, I'm talking a 3-month waiting list as people they want to come here.
Right. They want to come and volunteer.
But we're booked up.
But you need more.
Well, the problem is you can only fit so many people in a center, so you can only pack so many. We'll send about 40,000 cases out this year.
How many kids need them?
We have one kid every 2 minutes entering foster care in the United States, 740 a day. We hover close to 380,000 children in the United States.
And how many are you able to serve?
This year we'll serve about 40,000, so a very low number.
So if you had more centers.
If we had more center, and we're looking at that model. Again, when we started this model, I didn't think anything. I thought just, oh yeah, and yeah, now it's, we just got approved for our Canadian license. We're gonna pop up in Canada, 2027. I'm thinking we're gonna open up in Canada. So yeah, and look for us next year. I'm hoping to have more offices, centers across our country to truly help the impact. And a lot of things are happening in foster care throughout our country. People are talking more and more about it. So, it's time for the change.
What would you say to business leaders who are listening to this episode about what you've learned about leadership?
So the thing is that I have to remind people all the time, especially to our corporate people, you have to understand your corporate responsibility is to build the foundation of our community. And how do you do that? By you supporting those within our community. And I think that's something I've learned. I didn't think that actually when back when I was, as an executive, but, I'm going to read this to you because I'm going to say this tonight in a speech. I wrote this on a plane last night coming home from Minneapolis. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is not popularity. Leadership is not followers on social media. And leadership is definitely not waiting for someone else to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Be a leader. A doer.
And leaders don't have to necessarily be in C-suite or titles, right?
No, we're all leaders within ourselves. When I give talks, Lori, at schools, especially I love the younger kids, but when they ask me, Mr. Rob, they ask a question, they raise their hand. I always tell all the young people, you got to stand when you ask me a question. And the teachers and principals are like, wow. I'm like, because they're leaders, and leaders stand when they talk. And so molding these young minds is what it's all about. And by the way, 700 children a day enter foster care. It's on my shirt.
Yes, but didn't you just say 740?
740. The numbers have gone up. This was last year's shirt.
You need to take a Sharpie and
how
write it.
sad is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing to brag about.
No, not at all.
Listen, this has been an amazing conversation, by the way.
It has been. It really has been. So before we end, is there anything else that you need to say to people who are listening? Like, how could people, like, if somebody had a center or like a space where people could come and pack these backpacks, that would be useful, right?
Sure. They can always reach out to me at info@comfortcases.org if they have an idea like that. But what I want people to realize is that you don't have to have a lot of money to make an impact. And people say that too much. Oh, I can't help because I don't have any money. Listen, your time is the most valuable thing we all have. And we all have that. Now, whether or not you think you have any or you don't have any, the thing is time is what we all have. So give your time. Mentoring a young person, but let's say you don't have time to do that. You can do something else I can give you. There is no such thing as a used book, Lori. It's only a book that's been loved. In every single one of our cases, we put a book in it. So I remind people, go to comfortcases.org, go up to Give Back Box. We belong to a program with UPS. For $20, you can send me a 70-pound box. I will take those boxes of books, I will pack backpacks, and then I'll ship them back to your hometown at your child welfare office. And I will let them know that you donated those books. How about those little toiletry things that you all collect from those hotels? Those are the perfect size for us. And by the way, you're not going to use them. Stop putting them in a drawer.
Were you in my bathroom? How do you know?
No, hey, I'm married to an interior designer. He has them in a basket. So, but listen, the littlest things, pick the low-hanging fruit from your tree and your tree will grow taller.
Okay. And now before I ask you the song question, before we hit record, I asked you, and because people who might be watching this on YouTube might also be wondering, what is that frog behind you?
Oh, I have an amazing program with an amazing group of women in the Topeka Correctional Facility in Topeka, Kansas. A year ago, we kicked off this program. And by the way, my amazing friend, Melissa Etheridge, she was the one who actually introduced me to this. And my board president was the one who connected me. But these amazing ladies, they knit these for us and we put them in our backpack. So this was the very first one. And he's my buddy, so I keep him there on my shoulder.
Does he have a name?
He doesn't have a name yet. So, hey, info@comfortcases.org. Let's I think it's an iguana. So
it's an iguana. It looks a little froggy, but
yeah, it's a
now I see the body. It's more iguana.
Yeah, it's a gecko.
Yeah. Okay.
And again,
if you're just listening, go over.
Yep. If you have yarn, ladies need the yarn to make more stuffies.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. If you're just listening, I encourage you to go over to YouTube and see this stuffy. Rob, is there a song that you listen to when you need an extra boost of energy? I mean, clearly you are a very energized person to start with.
Wow, what a great question. And by the way, this particular artist means more to me than most people could ever imagine. It's not just an artist. When I entered boot camp, everybody in boot camp, the very first day, everybody pulled out a picture of their families, their girlfriends. And the only picture I had was a picture of this particular performer. And I went to the company commander and told him a little bit of my story. And he let me put her picture on that bulletin board. So, You're Simply the Best by Tina Turner.
Oh, Tina. She was amazing.
Yes.
And she has a whole story behind her life. I mean,
I related to her story because of my mother.
Yeah.
My mother, we lived in out of all those shelters, those battered women places. Oh, my father would beat my mother, then beat us. And so, yeah, I get it. But yeah, love me some Tina Turner. Simply the Best.
Cool. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. And tell us again if somebody wants to continue a conversation with you or get involved, where can they reach you?
First of all, you can always go to comfortcases.org. You can follow us on all the social media platforms. You can always find me at Rob Scheer. But you can always email me at info@comfortcases.org and let's continue the conversation.
Fantastic. Rob, thank you so much for joining me today on Fine is a 4-letter word.
Thank you.
Before we close, I want to sit with a few things from today's conversation with Rob Scheer, because this one is going to stay with me for a while. First, you are a product of your choices. Rob grew up with nothing, was homeless at 18, and built a remarkable life. His own mother was married 6 times, had 10 kids, and lived a life of chaos. They both made choices. He says it plainly. Stop calling it the product of the environment. It's the product of choices. Second, empathy is not something we're born with. It is taught. And if it's taught, that means it can be learned, practiced, and passed on. What? This one really challenged me, and I've been thinking and talking about this idea ever since we recorded. Additionally, what struck Rob as he traveled the country speaking over 200 nights a year is how many people don't just lack empathy, they don't even have an accurate definition of it. Third, your legacy is about what you give, not what you take. Rob realized he'd been giving his kids everything he never had, like private schools and designer clothes, and he saw he had raised entitled children. He was forgetting to teach them how to give. What we model for the next generation is the legacy. Fourth, leadership is not a title, popularity, or social media following. And leadership is definitely not waiting for someone else to fix the problem. Rob wrote this on a plane the night before we talked. He said, your corporate responsibility is to build the foundation of our community by supporting those within our community. Be a doer. And finally, you don't need a lot of money to make an impact. You need your time or a book that you've read or hotel toiletries sitting in a drawer. Rob is putting 40,000 cases of comfort into the hands of kids in foster care this year. One donated item, 1 hour of someone's time at a time. If this conversation moved you, share it. And if you want to do something with that feeling, go to comfortcases.org. I'm Lori Seitz, and this is Fine is a 4-letter word. I'll see you next time.